Hi, Janine. Hello. Welcome to Acquire English. We are going to talk about one of the videos that was posted in topics, and we're going to have a little discussion about it. How are you feeling? Are you feeling excited? Are you feeling angry? Be real.
I'm feeling excited. I'm not angry. I'm actually in a very good mood. So you caught me at a good time.
Well, good. I'm glad you're not angry. It's not a good way to start topics. I want to start with an
No.
open mind.
Yes.
Um, okay, so the title of the article that was read for topics, which was ocean forests, is Australia's ocean kelp forest is growing at a light speed, rivaling the mighty Amazon for absorbing CO2. What are your initial thoughts? Like, are you familiar with this topic?
I am. Actually, climate change and global warming are, and sustainability and just like renewable resources, everything like that is like a big passion of mine. And I've actually heard about the kelp forest before.
Hmm.
A couple years ago, I heard that it was like this, where it would totally reduce like so much of the CO2 being produced, and that you could also make products out of it. And like the kelp, if you harvest kelp, it actually, for human consumption, it has like all of the vitamins and minerals that you could need to sustain. And it has, I don't know if it has protein in it, but it has a lot of really good rich nutrients. And so not only does it help the planet, but it also is a really good source of food for humans and sea people, creatures.
Awesome.
The mer people, you know.
So it sounds like this is not a new topic to you. You already know a lot, and you actually mentioned already a few things that this article talks about. So I'm also feeling excited and not angry about this conversation that we're going to have about this article. So what I was thinking is, in the original video about this article, I broke it down paragraph by paragraph. So I was thinking that we could just look at each paragraph. I'm just going to read it out loud, and then we can kind of just talk about it and then move on to the next one.
Okay.
Great forests of ocean kelp were found in a recent study to be between 4 and 11 times more productive than the most productive crops grown today, like wheat, corn, and rice. So, what are your thoughts? Tell me, what does this make you think about? Does that make sense to you? What I just read?
Yeah, it does. That's absolutely astounding to me that the ocean life, the ocean plants grow better than the plants on land.
Right.
And these wheat, corn, and rice are super easy to grow, right? In whatever
Mm.
region that they're being grown in.
So that might
They're
be significant. Why? Because I was curious, like, why are they even mentioning these? But it's because they are like stupid easy to grow, and they love growing. It's
right, right.
right. Okay.
Like in the United States, in the Midwest, they grow wheat and corn like nobody's business. And then in Asia, they grow rice and they have rice, what are those, the steeps, and they can grow rice very,
Mm,
very easily. And so those are like our staple, like in America, wheat and corn are like the staples of our diet. And
right.
in
Yeah.
Asian countries, rice is a big, big staple for them.
Yeah.
So I think
Totally.
that it's supposed to make us think like, oh, like this kelp is growing so rapidly, um, more so than any of the plants that we can grow on Earth. And so that kind of gives me hope a little bit, because it's like, so this is cool, because if once the environment's changing constantly, but the oceans are going to be there, right? The oceans are
Hmm.
a stable factor. So if we can harness the growing power of the ocean
Right.
and
Yeah.
grow this kelp and offset the carbon emissions, but also have this amazing food source,
Hmm.
I mean, I think it's a no-brainer in my book.
Cool.
So yeah.
Also, just a small bit of feedback. If you could just talk a little bit slower for
Mm.
our listeners. I know Janine has her own podcast, Unlimited Growability, where she talks about pretty much everything, anything and everything under the sun. And it is very fantastic. I would recommend that. She's going to be talking fast in that podcast, let me tell you. But that's great practice for those advanced learners out there. Great. Awesome. Thank you so much for that insight. Let's move on to the next paragraph. On land, the fastest growth rates occur in the tropics. But in the ocean, the most productive ecosystems are found in the temperate zones where cool, nutrient-rich waters create forests of golden bull and bamboo kelp that can grow 100 feet tall, the equivalent of 35 meters. So this is kind of talking to what you were saying about, you wouldn't expect things to be growing quickly in the ocean, like on land.
Right. Um, it's interesting to me that it says the temperate zones. So the cooler waters is where these kelp forests are flourishing.
Mm.
Um, so I think that's important to note because some waters, like the Atlantic Ocean, is much warmer than the Pacific Ocean, for example. And so I believe that the kelp forests are actually growing, they're thriving in the Pacific Ocean. I feel like that's where you're going to find these crops growing. Um,
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. I always
yeah.
think of the Pacific Ocean. I feel like there's this common misconception that the Pacific Ocean is warmer than the Atlantic because it's like California and there's like
Mm-mm.
surfing and everything, but it actually is
It's cold.
cold compared
Hmm.
to the Atlantic, which is warmer, which is not as good for sea kelp, according to
No.
this article. Okay. So, next paragraph. This was the result of a global diving survey organized by the University of Western Australia, during which they found the most productive sea forests outgrow even the mighty Amazon rainforest. That is a
Wow.
powerful statement.
Wow. Yes. Because Amazon was thriving. Sadly, it's not anymore. But
Yeah, it had some
um,
problems, some fire problems in recent years.
yeah, yeah, yep. And the deforestation is rough in that part of the world
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, and I know a lot
But
of people have been very concerned about those fires in the Amazon. And when I found this article about the sea forests being a good combat to CO2 being in the atmosphere, it felt like such a positive, you know, idea to look at after what happened in the Amazon.
completely. And also, there's all sorts of natural disasters that are happening all over the world in parts of the world where it's not necessarily um, n- not necessarily like weather that's frequently there. You know what I mean? Like the world is crazy. It's getting interesting to see the effects that climate change and global warming are having on the natural disasters and just fires, floods, just crazy stuff is happening. The
Hurricanes.
hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, right? Like
Mhm.
earthquakes. How many more of these things have been reported in the last 20 years than they were in the 19th or in the 20th century, right? Like I
Yeah,
feel
it's
like
definitely big disasters are increasing.
yes, yes. And so this article brings me hope because if we can grow these kelp forests, and obviously the ocean is a vast place, and with the Pacific Ocean, that's the largest ocean, so if that's where these plants thrive, then
Some good
why
news.
yeah, then why can't we grow more kelp forests, right? Like if
Yeah,
they're
with some
growing so
intention.
fast, right,
Hmm.
right. And then there's this concept of, and I don't think that this article talks about it, but kelp can be utilized in a what they call a vertical sea garden. And so what they do is they'll have the kelp like on the bottom or whatever type of seaweed or sea plant grows in that region, and then they'll usually have some sort of maybe crab traps or like shrimp trap, something to trap the sea food that is in that region. And it's like they grow it vertically though.
Shellfish.
Yeah, whatever, I mean, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes it makes sense to me because vertical means that you're using more of the vertical space. So you're taking up less of that, horizontal space, and you're not
Mm-hmm.
using so much of the coastline for this project. But they've found that those are really good ideas. That's a really good way to use the kelp because it acts as it attracts those sea creatures, but it also grows super fast, and then humans can harvest it as well. And so they're
Mm-hmm.
collecting the seafood, but they're also collecting the kelp and they're making things out of it. And so I think that could be really cool. I feel like we should be doing more of that.
Right. Like
Those
maybe
types.
it could help to make fishing practices more sustainable if it's,
Yes.
created in this more controlled environment or something.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, let's go to the next section here. The Great African Sea Forest is believed to be expanding in size, unlike other mega undersea habitats made up of bamboo kelp and containing huge amounts of biodiversity. It stretches over 400 miles from Cape Town's waters to Namibia's, nourished by Antarctic current known as the Benguela upwelling. So, can you tell me more? So, it's talking about unlike other mega undersea habitats. So, what does that mean? This is expanding in size unlike others. Like what's happening with the rest of the ocean?
I would imagine, I'm not a marine biologist or a scientist or anything like that, but I would imagine the effects of what humans have been doing, and all of the microplastics and all of the horrible things that we've put into our oceans. I think that's causing a decline in the natural production of underwater life. Yeah, that's what I would guess. Is I think that we're polluting the oceans so much that it is literally killing growth.
Yeah,
It's
I
killing
was
the plant.
I was surprised when I saw this article that the sea forests were expanding because usually what I hear about the oceans are the coral reefs are dying and like
Mm-hmm.
really, receding or they're being bleached or all these horrible things
Mm-hmm.
because of sunscreen are
Yep.
happening. But then I didn't really think about kelp and like sea forests. I always think about corals. So
Right.
that's why it was so intriguing to me. We're almost to the end of this
Yep.
article here. So, the findings of these divers were that tropical forests were not the most productive, that those from temperate zone that contain kelps that can grow 11 times faster than wheat, corn, or rice. So, that's something that was kind of mentioning earlier
Yep.
in the article as well. And then the mass natural production aids in the world's food security, the authors found. And nowhere is this more demonstrated than Indonesia. The aquaculture of their seaweed forests create products as varied as bioplastics alongside ice cream. And that was something that you were kind of speaking to earlier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've never heard
Which
of aquaculture before.
I know, but that it makes sense though, right? So we've got horticulture, you've got agriculture, you've got
Mm,
all these, and so it makes sense. So aquaculture is kind of talking about those vertical forests or those vertical things that I was talking about, vertical growth. That would be an example of aquaculture. If they could, they're harnessing, they're growing the kelp and they're using the kelp and they're creating these awesome products. It's very cool to me that they can create bioplastics out of kelp. Like that makes sense, right?
yeah,
Because you're using a natural product other than petroleum,
I
which is
know.
derived from oil and gas, which
Yeah, fossil
are
fuels.
obviously that is a natural, thing that's created on the earth as well. But I feel like if we could create bioplastics from kelp, and so that will actually biodegrade,
Because it's
it will actually
regenerative.
yes,
It's growing
yes,
17 or 15 centimeters per
right,
day. So you
right,
take the growth it has each day and you make
yeah.
bioplastics, you come back and it's
and it's
regrown.
and it's
It's
regrown, exactly, and then you can make
circle.
food as well.
The next
Hmm.
part of this article is probably one of my favorite parts.
Okay.
So as well as assisting in human flourishing, These forests play a critical role in the global carbon cycle by absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, much like their productivity being much higher than terrestrial counterparts. The rate at which they absorb CO2 has been measured at 30 times faster than trees on land.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that was the most impactful part of this article for me, was that
Wow.
piece of information.
That's incredible. 30 times more effective at absorbing the carbon dioxide than trees on land.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, because I know we were talking about the Amazon and like the fires that had happened, and the
Hmm.
Amazon is often referred to as like the lungs of the earth.
Yeah.
But oceans, I mean, I have heard of oceans and CO2 having a relationship, but I didn't know that it was specifically from kelp and, ocean forests. And
And
that
the
is actually maybe more of the reason why the ocean does absorb some of that CO2 from the atmosphere.
yeah, it's
Okay.
it's very cool.
This last part, I wasn't um super, like, I don't, maybe you can help me understand this last part. Scientists from the nonprofit Great Southern Reef estimate that if just 0.001% of the ocean surface was cultivated with these productive forests, it would offset the emissions of the entire global aquaculture industry.
Wow, that is powerful. Okay,
So
so
is it like the industry that's creating its own, carbon footprint is offsetting itself, making it carbon neutral? Is that what they're saying? Or
I think, yeah, because so if we're calling it aquaculture, aquaculture industry to me means fishing, boating, transportation,
oh,
shipping,
right.
cargoes, right? So think about all of the things that we're using the
Oh,
ocean for,
like the cargo ships that go from China to the
the
west
United
coast of the
States or
United States.
wherever. Yeah,
It's including all of that.
yeah, I believe,
Wow, I didn't even think about that. Wow, that's
and
a huge
also
deal.
fishing and shrimping, anything that when we're capturing animals from the ocecean,
Mm-hmm.
that is obviously creating an impact as well. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what this is saying, 0.001%, that is like minuscule. And the fact that
Yeah.
that is what we need to be carbon neutral for all of our aquaculture stuff, which is vast and
Yeah.
huge, right? I mean, the water is 70% of the world. So, we're going to be using the sea, um, and we have been.
Yeah. If
Like,
anything, it's getting bigger. So we need
right,
to fill it with more
right.
forests.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Offset some of this, the melting, the heating of the earth so that the ice caps don't melt as fast. If we could offset that, that would alleviate a lot of issues that are starting to happen right
Mm-hmm.
now that we're seeing.
Janine, thank you so much for coming today. And I'm really glad that we got to talk about this article. I always feel like you have really good insight into things and worldly things and news related things. And of course, global warming. I know you're very passionate about that. So I appreciate you sharing all of your thoughts.
Well, thank you for having me, and like and subscribe if you like this video.
Thumbs up. Okay, great.